So usually when I make videos, I have a script or at least like a basic outline of what I'm going to talk about or a plan of some sort, but with this one I haven't really written anything down. I'm just going straight from the heart. So I think it was like 2015. It would have been like February or March or maybe January. It was early 2015, and I was living in Denver with my sister, Marianne, one of my 5 sisters. I have 5 sisters and 2 brothers. I can't remember if I've disclosed that information or not. But I was living with my sister, Marianne. We had an apartment downtown. If you're familiar with Denver now or in the past couple of years, it's pretty expensive. And I was working at a restaurant. I was hosting and bussing tables, and I made decent tips, but I didn't work a whole lot, so I was pretty poor, which partly was on me because I wanted free time to do things creatively, but nothing was really happening, and I was very depressed. And of the 2 brothers I have, Isaac had played Dark Souls, and he had suffered through it because it might be my favorite game ever made, but it is obscenely obtuse for someone to get into it that doesn't know anything about it. And Isaac had been trying to get me to play Dark Souls for probably a year, maybe over a year at that point, because, you know, like anyone else who's played it and actually persevered and gone through it, it kind of ruins them because they don't want to play anything else because it is that good or had a profound effect on them or whatever. And the first time I tried it, like a lot of other people, I immediately went to the graveyard and got my ass kicked by skeletons, and then I was like, yeah, fuck this game. And I didn't play it for probably a year until early 2015, which I guess is the point I'm trying to get to, is for whatever reason I decided to give it a second try, and because Isaac had already suffered through it and he knew all the, really weird stuff, like, oh, you need this ring to do this, or like you have to beat this wolf so that you can go in New Londo without being a ghost and all this stuff. He was basically my strategy guide, and he made it so that I could play through the game essentially on easy mode, which I'm not ashamed of, because if that's what it took to get me into the Soul series, I'm okay with that. But told me enough to get me started, and then I just went hog wild with the game. And I remember when I made it back to Firelink Shrine after going through Undead Burg and before you fight the gargoyle dudes, and just hearing the Firelink Shrine music and like being like, oh, holy shit, like realizing where I was and where I had gone and like mapping out, all of the locations in my head, realizing the map was fully connected. And I remember that was the moment that I was like, okay, there's something going on here. And then for the next month or couple weeks at least, the game just like consumed me because I was super depressed and I was working on music, but other than working and sleeping and hanging out with the few friends I had, and there's some girl stuff going on in there somewhere, all I basically thought about was playing Dark Souls, because I had kind of been getting burnt out. Like the only games I would really play were like Smash or Left 4 Dead with my brother, with my friends, and Dark Souls like rekindled that like holy shit feeling of playing a video game. Like nothing had made me feel as like completely immersed. People use that word a lot, but it was a complete escape playing that game. Like, and I'm okay to admit it, that it was the thing I looked forward to was playing Dark Souls, it's ironic that was the happy part of my life, because that game is dark, pun intended, and it's depressing and it kicks your ass, but I can remember exactly how I felt of signature moments like fighting O and S over and over and over and finally beating them by myself nonetheless, and never feeling as like proud or satisfied with myself ever, which is sad. And I don't mean to like knock other achievements, because up until that point most of my life had been about playing the drums in like junior high or high school, and I actually won a bunch of awards. Like, I'm not trying to toot my own horn. Like, I had things to be proud of, but I remember when I finally beat O&S, and I was just like, oh man, I was so stoked. And then, from that point, anyone who's played Dark Souls knows that the game, it falls apart a little bit, because not everything is connected on the map. I mean, even in Honor Londo, it's not connected, and, Lost Izalith is a bed of chaos, all that bullshit sucks. But yeah, there's a lot of moments in Dark Souls that I can clearly remember because I was just that sucked into the game. And I'm not a big fantasy fan, but I was like reading up on the lore and I was watching the Vati Vidya channel. But I dove headfirst into it. And it's like one of the few games that I've actually bought like the art book for because I was just obsessed with it. And one of the main things I think about the game that really stood out to me was that it was dark and it was depressing, but there was just like a beauty underneath all of the backstories of the characters, of the tragedies or the bosses, or like the Artorias boss fight is probably my favorite boss fight in any game, just because it's super fun and he's such a sick character, and like there was just so much connection between everything in the game, of the lore and just the feeling of the different environments, and the fact that the map is connected and you can see Ash Lake from Tomb of the Giants, and you know you make it to Ash Lake after going through the Great Hollow Tree, and you realize how crazy vertical and deep the map goes. And it's drink break. Why is there a 40 by your bed? Well, God works in mysterious ways. In a time where I was super depressed and I didn't have any direction, and all my friends that I had were in college, and I was barely making any money, and as kind of stupid as it sounds, it made me feel like I had some sense of purpose of the second that I got sucked into the game. After I realized the map looped back to Firelink Shrine, I like knew that I had to beat the game. Like I knew that I had to see it through, and not just because it was like, oh, it's fun, or it's an escape, which it was both of those things too. It was very satisfying to beat the bosses, but it was like it was like my divine it was like my divine destiny to beat the game. Like it was just something I knew I had to do. And I just remember at 3 or 4 a.m. after I beat the game, just sitting there watching the credits being like, holy shit, why did I not play this game before? It not only rekindled my love for video games and just made me proud of myself and made me feel, I don't know, gave me some sort of sense of control in my life, that I somehow went from sucking ass fighting the skeletons at the beginning on accident and beating the game, that I somehow went on that journey and came out of it all the better. And there was just no part of me that thought I had wasted any time playing Dark Souls like maybe I had playing other video games, of just being mindless distractions from what I had going on or whatever. But Dark Souls, it felt like a religious experience that was like, oh man, if something like that can exist in this world, like this is a world I want to live in. Which it took a virtual thing to make me appreciate my real life a lot more and be inspired and whatever. But this random, or seemingly random to me, fantasy game that my brother just kept telling me to play ended up being like the best video game I think I've ever played, and set me on whatever course I am now of wanting every game to be Dark Souls and making a YouTube channel and talking about it a lot. And like there's a reason the second video I ever made was a Games That Should Bang with Dark Souls and Max Payne, because those are probably my two favorite games, and I think that if I shove them together they'll both be better, which probably isn't true, but it had just totally invaded my brain and I think made me a lot better for playing it. So as another YouTuber I'm sure most of you are familiar with would say, thank you, Dark Souls.